welcome back to the Fourth Wall TV. This is our third episode. We read pages 76 to the end of Fahrenheit 451. My name is Lorna.
My name is Melanie.
I'm Colin.
And I'm Guy.
And we will be talking about author intent. This book kind of went crazy at the end. A lot of it was murky, and you couldn't really tell what was happening. He flashed back and forth a lot between imagining what was happening to his wife during the bombing and what was actually happening around him, and it was really fuzzy, especially when he was recalling books of the Bible. It was weird. In terms of author intent, I feel like a lot of it is shown through when he kills his captain. They had this dispute when the captain shows up to burn down Guy's house, Montag's house, and Guy's like, wait, we're at my house, what do you mean? And then the captain kind of matches his argument with Guy's potential argument and ends up quoting books a lot. It showed definitely a tortured sort of.
Yeah, there was a lot of that. It was he was kind of saying a lot about the books without being oh, I don't read anything, I don't know anything about it, and then saying things give a man a few lines of verse and he thinks he's the Lord of creation, which is an obvious something. These people don't have opinions about they're not supposed to have opinions about literature, but a lot of things that Beatty says is kind of his it's opinionated lines from something else. And I also think when he says to Montag about, he's I want you to do this job all by your lonesome, Montag, not with kerosene and a match, but piecework with a flamethrower. And then he's when you're quite finished, you're under arrest. So he kind of makes him burn down his own house. And then he finds out that his wife turned him in. And it's kind of bad, I guess.
Yeah, and not only did his wife turn him in, but other women turned him in before, and then they just waived the accusation until his own wife called him in.
Yeah.
Also, Beatty, his captain, on page 104 says, books are traitors, they're contradictory, and then contradicts himself throughout the entire thing.
Very confusing. Beatty is has a very confusing perspective. I'm not quite sure where his position is. Whether we know that he opposes books, but he knows so much about them, and he's he monologues in this very he has a very poetic way of talking about these books, and it's kind of funny.
Something he said. Yeah, my bad.
Also, he says, or Montag says, when he's describing the captain in that moment on page 104, he says, the captain belongs to the most dangerous enemy to truth and freedom, the solid, unmoving cattle of the majority. I feel this is where the author's intent really comes in. He's straight up just saying it right now. I feel that's how I interpreted it.
Saying what?
He's saying that there's a majority that people will fall into, and even if it doesn't seem right or it doesn't seem like people are too concerned with protecting themselves, and that's why there were firefighters.
Mm-hmm.
Or people who started fires.
Yeah.
This is in the.
Oh wait.
Well, I was that just reminded me of the one part in the book where the alarms, they were talking about how the wife rung the alarm, and it was just funny because before the alarms would be rung to take out the fires, not create them.
Mm-hmm.
That was just weird.
Yeah,
that was just something I noticed.
And I also think that's kind of a little bit of irony in this. Is one of the things that Beatty says is, and the books say nothing you can teach or believe. But it's the way that I think that's also from the activity we did yesterday on author's intent. It's kind of the way that the author is saying this is kind of something that she's just obviously contradicting herself because she is an author, but also what Beatty is saying is just straight up just totally against his ideology of just how it nothing you can teach or believe. That's not how they thought of books anyway. And not when they're saying there's a little bit of the thing going through kind of Montag telling the story of this society, which is I think some of my favorite parts of this book are the parts where he talks about how society became this. And just something school is shortened, discipline relaxed, philosophy is history's language is dropped. English and spelling gradually neglected, finally, and then almost completely ignored. So the way that like they're controlling society is just to take away thought, take away the thinking of like the people in it. Basically.
Yeah. I definitely agree. I was thinking back to like you said like the way that society has changed, but it really didn't change that much, like in terms of like the spirit of humanity, because he started reading those poems to the women that came to his house, and the one woman started crying like uncontrollably, and they were like, "What did you do to her?" Like, and I think personally, just the way that I read it, I think it was on page 96 and 97. Like I think that it just moved her so much, and just with the lack of like poems and like poeticness to their life, like it's pretty mundane, and
There's just no romance.
yeah, there's no romance, there's no nothing.
Oh, that's also the way the wife mourned the family instead of like her whole house.
Yeah.
She's like, my family, they're gone.
Yeah. That's
It was just so
crazy.
weird. I was like, I liked how at the almost at the end he was sad about Millie.
Mhm.
It was just, I don't know. It was just sweet.
Like when he's like,
In a sense, yeah.
when he's like, we met in Chicago.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, he remembers. Also, like, I didn't realize exactly what the fourth wall or the third wall TV was, because I thought it was just like, oh, like a, you know, like second story novels where you like pick your path when you're reading it.
The choice novel.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was like that, but like customized for each person, because when her friends were leaving after the one girl started crying because of the poem reading or whatever, they were like, feel free, Mildred, to like come visit me and my family anytime. And it's like, yo, I didn't realize that they had like different families that they were literally visiting with, but it was all just like a program.
It was weird.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
Trying. Yeah. I was just thinking about, like, what caused. Like, I'm trying to think about from the author's perspective, why did the society become this way? I think that's a worthy question. I know Beatty definitely talks about it in like one of his first monologues. He talks about how the government didn't do this, but the people actually did this themselves because they were uncomfortable with things that they dislike.
Or being attacked.
Yeah. But I was kind of confused because there wasn't like a main like reason that was like driven forward. There were a bunch of like different kind of ideas that were presented by the book. You know, people aren't uncomfortable. You know, and then like there's all this like stuff, and that I think that confused me a little with the moral, I guess. I know what the author is trying to say that reading is good, but there is like I feel as though there was a lack of justification for why. I feel like it's almost it's like kind of hypocritical. It's like the author, he's saying this thing, he's telling people to do this thing, but he's not giving a reason. In a book that is protesting against doing things without reason. Yeah. So.
Oh yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
Like yeah.
Yeah. There's just so many blank spaces in this book.
Mm-hmm.
Like why the wars were going on. This whole city just burned down. No, not burned down. It was bombed.
Yeah.
Randomly. Not not randomly.
We knew it was coming, but we
We
didn't
knew
know
it was coming, but it was like so quick.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're almost reading this book as if like the book is meant to be read. I know it's like maybe that we're just like not smart, but we're pretty smart. Like, we're reading this book and like I guess how somebody like we're reading it in the sense that we're not aware of everything. Like it's written in a way that it's kind of like similar to the way that the characters in this book think. that like the way that their life is functioning, it's not ever focused on, it's not like ever seeing everything, it's just focused on one thing. Like Mildred with the TV, like a lot of the men with their jobs, and then I guess the outlier was obviously Clarice, who was like, whenever she saw Montag, she would like jump from thing to thing. Like, do you do this? Do you do this? How's that? So I think that's kind of like how the book was meant to be interpreted.
And it also feels like it feels like a second book of a series. It feels like we should have known things about the war beforehand. We should have known things like, because it throws around terms that we have to just use context clues to figure out what they are. And that's kind of how like reading the second book of a series is like, because you might not remember everything of the first book, but it's like kind of reminiscent of the 50s, but then it's also like futuristic. It's really confusing.
And like a lot of
Yeah, I agree. That's all I was gonna say.
It gives kind of the impression of like a journal that was written by Montag or something like that. I feel like that maybe that could explain why there are all these like strange, like themes, like scattered around themes in there, is because this like Montag has not been exposed to very many pieces of literature.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's all we have for today.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to Fourth Wall TV.